from the campaign trail, part of C-SPAN's Battleground States tour.
After the State Department's Inspector General briefed senior members of Congress in a closed-door meeting, Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland told reporters about a packet of articles and memos pertaining to Ukraine and other matters that the Inspector General turned over to Congress.
Good. All right. So, okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Let's see. This meeting was requested by the Inspector General, and he wanted to give us a packet of information, which is unclassified, which originally arrived at the Department of State, addressed to Secretary Pompeo, and it looks like this. So it's in calligraphy. It says, Secretary Pompeo, attention Ruth, and it says the White House. So it may have come from the White House, it may not. We don't know. Then there are a series of folders which all come from Trump hotels. So folder after folder that say Trump Hotel. Now, I haven't had time to thoroughly scrutinize everything that's in here, but it's essentially a packet of propaganda and disinformation spreading conspiracy theories. Those conspiracy theories have been widely debunked and discredited. Apparently, the material came in May of this year, and so it coincided with the moment in which Ambassador Yovanovitch was recalled. So it was clearly targeting her as well as some other people. The Inspector General turned it over to the FBI and then has not done anything else internally with it at the Department of State, as far as we understand. When the whistleblower report came out, he felt that he needed to turn it over to Congress, and so we are now in possession of this packet of propaganda and disinformation that was circulated in May. Now, it mentions a number of people that we're planning to see, most notably Ambassador Yovanovitch. Secretary of State Pompeo is trying to block her from coming. We don't think he'll succeed in doing that, but he wants to try to prevent her to coming to Congress to give her testimony. The existence of this packet and its curious history raises profoundly troubling questions. Why was Secretary of State Pompeo in possession of this packet of disinformation? Why did he distribute it and circulate it? To whom else did he distribute it and circulate it? And why was his staff involved in that process? So I've got to say that it raises more questions than it answers. I'm not sure that it's necessarily an urgent thing, but I can understand why the Inspector General at this point wanted to turn it over to Congress.
What is the Inspector General's concern? What is the Inspector General's concern here?
You'd have to ask the Inspector General about that. He just realized that given the whistleblower's account and reporting suggesting that there's been an effort to target Ambassador Yovanovitch and that there is, the effort to deploy the president's cabinet to go abroad in search of conspiracy theories, that this would be relevant. So I imagine that's why, but you'd have to ask him. I mean, he didn't say specifically why he felt he had to turn it over, but that was my impression.
Mr. Raskin, is he alleging, is the Inspector General alleging that the Secretary of State was targeting the former ambassador with this document of conspiracy theories? Is that what he's alleging?
No, he was not alleging that Secretary of State Pompeo did it, but this was all addressed to Secretary of State Pompeo. This is where it came from, and then he made it available to the Inspector General. We don't know who else it was given to, but it's consistent with the conspiracy theories that you see online about CrowdStrike and about Ukraine actually having concocted the whole story about the Russian interference in our election. And of course, Special Counsel Mueller found that there was a sweeping and systematic campaign by Russia to interfere in an election. That's an established fact right now. The intelligence community accepts it. But there are these lingering conspiracy theories, which the president has been promoting, attempting to undermine Mueller's findings about that. And given that the president was not found by Mueller to have been conspiring with Russia, it raises the question, why is the White House still trying to undermine the separate finding that Russia had engaged in a sweeping and systematic campaign to undermine our election? That can serve only one person, and that's Vladimir Putin and the Russian government.
Who does he think is responsible for that? Who does he think is responsible for that document?
But the Inspector General has no idea where it came from. I mean, of course, on its face, it says it's coming from the White House. This doesn't look like White House stationery. Then there are all of these Trump Hotel folders that are built into it. So it has mysterious and uncertain provenance.
So the Inspector General was basically covering his bases. He's not alleging any wrongdoing by anyone inside the State Department.
Correct. The Inspector General was basically just saying we're sitting on this packet of disinformation which came from some uncertain place. And again, this is my interpretation of it. There may be misconduct by the Secretary of State or other State Department employees in distributing this if they know where it comes from and they know that it does not have any authentic source in the White House. But maybe it did come from the White House. We just don't know where it came from. I think that's the big mystery here. It's very clear what it is. It is a package of propaganda and disinformation and conspiracy theories. The real question is, where did it come from and how did it end up in our lap right now?
In advance of this, of ownership, how did the IG become aware of this? This went to Secretary Pompeo, and then how did it get to the IG?
This is a question you have to ask to the IG, but I believe it was the counsel to the State Department who turned it over to the IG.
Did Pompeo distribute it in any other ways to staffers?
We don't know the answer to that, and we don't know where it came from. The whole thing looks rather amateurish to me. It looks like a collection of some newspaper articles that appear to have been coordinated, some emails, and then basically a lot of conspiracy theories.
Could it be some sort of a false flag operation if it was done so amateurish, as you suggest?
It could be anything at this point. Who knows?
Part of this meeting, there had been some reporting that the urgent matter related to the State Department retaliating against career officials who tried to cooperate or wanted to cooperate with House Democrats. Did that come up at all today?
That was not the purpose of this meeting. That was not a subject of the meeting. So really, the whole meeting consisted of the Inspector General turning over this packet of information to us, and then people trying to figure out where it came from and what it all means.
What constitutes an urgent concern? Why is this considered urgent if it's unclear where this is even coming from?
Well, that was one of the questions I think a lot of people at the president in the meeting had. The Inspector General seemed to feel that he had been sitting on this for months and that it might be relevant to the work of the committee. I mean, the committee is obvious. Look, the big story is the President of the United States was involved in a shakedown operation against the Ukrainian government attempting to obtain political dirt on the Bidens, and he held up hundreds of millions of dollars in foreign military and economic aid in order to make that happen. Then they covered the whole thing up. There's not much of an effort to refute that on the facts, but there's an effort to try to go underneath it to say that there was a vast conspiracy to make up everything that Special Counsel Mueller investigated. I don't really know the relevance of it. At a certain point, it's hard to follow all of the conspiracy theories, but this packet of information is simply meant to advance the conspiracy theory that Mueller's finding that there was a sweeping and systematic campaign by Russia to interfere in our election was specious and fallacious.
And as you go forth trying to write potential articles of impeachment for the president, you're on the Judiciary Committee. How does that play into this? I mean, is this part of, and did the IG come forth with this at this point only prompted by the fact that we are this deep into impeachment at this stage and thought he was compelled to do so?
Well, there's nothing in here, I think, that's directly relevant to the president's impeachable conduct. I don't think it relates to the president's high crimes and misdemeanors, but it does relate to efforts to sabotage Ambassador Yovanovitch and to basically smear a number of employees who perhaps were getting in the way of the president. And I think that's really the importance of this document, that there was an organized effort to go after people who the White House or perhaps Mr. Giuliani thought were getting in the way of the president's political agenda.
Did the IG allege that? Did the IG
No,
allege
no, that's my interpretation of the situation.
The words propaganda, disinformation, and
No, that's totally my interpretation of what this is. He just said I wanted to turn it over, so everybody's going to have to take a look at it and see if you think there's something valuable in there.
If that's the case, Congressman, can you be more specific about the claims that you characterize as conspiracy theories? Like, what are the actual claims that you're characterizing that way?
Well, I imagine everybody, you're going to have to. The committees, I think, are going to be discussing what to do with all of the information, but the names that you've been reading about in the conspiracy theories are in this package. So the Bidens are in there, Yovanovitch is in there, and so on. So there's been an attempt to create a narrative that would somehow justify what the president did. Now, from our perspective, all of it is completely and totally irrelevant. This is an irrelevant distraction from the matter at hand. What the president did was to use the military and national security power of his office in order to try to extract political dirt from a foreign ally, a besieged foreign ally resisting Russian aggression. That's really the only thing that America understands, and that's all America needs to understand, because the rest of this, I think, is a propagandistic distortion and distraction of other events. But people will have a chance to read it on their own to see if there's anything in there. But I do think that America's eyes are glazing over at all of the propaganda that we're getting as an effort to distract people from what we know has happened. There's one crucial story everybody needs to understand.
Congressman, is it fair to say?
I'll come right back.
Did the IG offer a reason for why the ambassador was targeted the way she was?
He did not. He did not really get into the merits of what anyone was saying.
But the motivation behind this effort?
No. Again, the Inspector General basically just said, this is something that landed in our lap in May. It said its provenance was the White House, but there were all these Trump Hotel folders on the inside. They don't know exactly where it came from. But it's pretty clear whoever put it together was attempting to advance exactly the storyline that Mr. Giuliani would like to be advancing.
The American people should read it and make up their own mind. Will this become public? How will that happen?
I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not chair of the Oversight Committee or the Intelligence Committee, but I imagine that they're looking at it all now. It is not classified material.
And Congressman, is it safe to say all of this has in common Ukraine, or are there other conspiracy theories unrelated to Ukraine also in this packet?
Again, I just sort of gave it my best Evelyn Wood reading while I was in there, so I wasn't able to study it minutely. But I think the focus.
Carter Page, there's nothing.
No. The focus of it was Ukraine, and then to the extent that obviously the Ukraine investigation is related to Russia. There's some of that in there too.
Now we know that Yovanovitch was supposed to come today and was delayed. Was her delay partly because the IG was going to come up and talk about this today? Are those two events connected?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know.
A couple times, did the IG actually mention Rudy Giuliani as well? You had mentioned Rudy Giuliani a couple times.
No, that's my interpretation. In other words, if you read the packet of information, it's a series of somewhat hallucinatory propagandistic suggestions that are very consistent with the things that Rudolph Giuliani has been saying. But I put it this way, if I had to guess who was behind it, if it really did not come directly from the White House, I would guess that it was Giuliani. But I have no way to know. Giuliani's name is all over it. There are a series of memos in there where Giuliani was present. And so somebody should ask Giuliani whether he knows anything about this. Maybe he doesn't, and it's just one of his acolytes.
Did the IG mention Giuliani at all?
No.
Congressman, can you clarify? You talked about the Secretary of State spreading this or distributing this. Can you clarify the Secretary of State's role with this document?
I don't know the answer to that, and that's one of the things that we want to get to the bottom of at this point. Where did this package of material come from that was apparently hand-delivered to Secretary of State Pompeo, addressed to Ruth, which apparently is his assistant? It says the White House, but who knows whether it's the White House or that's speaking euphemistically or metaphorically. Who knows where it came from? So. Well, it would be curious to know where it came from and what he knows about its provenance and then what he did with it.
Did the IG say that the Secretary of State was cooperative, or did he raise any concerns about the Secretary of State's conduct in any way?
There was no discussion of that.
What basis do you
One more second.
And then I'm afraid I'm going to have to go after this question.
Send that to me.
I'm sorry.
I didn't get it. Thank you.
What basis do you have to continually say Rudy Giuliani may have been behind this?
Well, as I stated, this is a guess.
And who is Ruth on that?
Do you think that we should be guessing on this kind of thing?
That's Pompeo's assistant, right?
I don't know if it's. I don't know. It appears to be. There's a.
And on the question, though, you speculated that this may be Giuliani. Is that reasonable to do? Is that when you guys talk about being deliberate about this process with impeachment and all these things? Is it responsible to suggest and take that leap of faith that it may be Giuliani?
All I said is it is very consistent with the things Giuliani's been saying. I have no reason to think that he was the one who prepared the document, but it is very consistent with the things he's been saying. And, so he might know something about it. He might know nothing about it.
Someone back there asked a question. It's a good one. Were you the only lawmaker at this meeting, and if so, why?
I think I may be the only local lawmaker who was available, so I was able to come, and I was happy to participate in it.
Do you plan to brief your Democratic leadership and the Democratic caucus on this package?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think the other, everybody else present, the other staffers, there were excellent staffers from the Intelligence Committee and the Oversight Committee who were present.
Have you looked at every document in that envelope?
I've looked through all of them, but I'm definitely going to study it again.
It feels overall more broadly that this is not central to this investigation. This is something that is, as you said, a distraction. Is that right? This is something that perhaps the committees are not going to be interested in?
It feels to me like a completely irrelevant distraction from the work at hand. But I'll study it more carefully. Look, there's been an effort from the beginning to distract us from what the president's misconduct was. This is a totally unprecedented situation. The President of the United States used the military national security power of the United States to shake down an ally of the country for political dirt on an opponent in an election. We've never experienced anything like that before. And so if that's true, there's not much of a defense of that. So that's why I think there's an effort to distract us with a lot of other things. And this may or may not be part of that effort. I don't know.
To be clear, sir, there's no evidence that ties us to the White House other than the words of the White House, which anyone could write.
Exactly. That's why I'm suspicious of it, but maybe it did come from the White House. It doesn't say exactly who at the White House it came from. So, other than the fact that it says the White House, I think it's more likely to go to the next page. That's a Xerox of the Trump hotels, and there are 4 or 5 of those that are built into the packet. So.
How many pages are all these packets?
I can't say for sure. It looks like it's about 40 pages.
But that's basically the whole dossier.
That's the whole dossier. Yeah. So, I don't want to get I don't want to get into that any more deeply. Check with the committee staff because I can't release it to anybody without that. But
They're all unclassified.
Yes, this is unclassified information.
And the committee staffs from what committees were there today?
The House and Senate Intelligence and Oversight, at least. Yeah. No, it looks like Trump Hotel stationery, which were the folders that were used that the documents were placed in.
From multiple hotels?
Sorry?
From multiple hotels?
Well, no, it looks like from the same hotel. It's the same Trump Hotel stationery.
Do you feel like you're being dragged down a rabbit hole here?
I believe that this is an irrelevant distraction from where we need to go. We thought that this was about something else. The press, at least, was widely reporting that something else was at stake, and instead we got this packet of information. So,
is there something you would have liked the IG to address as it pertains to what we've been hearing about Ukraine and potential pressure put on witnesses either by Congress or by White House or Trump administration officials not to comply?
This was all we talked about. So forgive me because I got to go now. I'm being beckoned to
address those issues.
I've got to go. I'm being beckoned by my staff. So thank you so much.
Would you recommend not?
Like I said,